This essay is not an assault on the sacred. It is an autopsy of the shadows that myths cast upon our reality. We are a species of seekers, instinctively carving meaning into symbols, patterns, and the silent spaces of hidden narratives. That hunger for the infinite birthed our grandest cathedrals, our deepest philosophies, and the very gods we fear. However, a grave transition occurs when we trade our personal discernment for collective dogma. When a Christian republic, or any ideological machine, organizes society around a literalized myth, it does more than recruit believers. It confiscates their agency. By demanding the story be accepted as a static material truth rather than a transcendent allegory, the system strips the wisdom of the universe from your hands and places it into the gears of the cold political machine. The mystery is murdered to feed the mechanism, leaving the seeker not with a dialogue with the divine, but with a script for a spectacle. When a myth hardens into a literal cosmic battlefield, a war between ultimate light and absolute dark, the story becomes a weapon. Power learns to wear the robes of the revered, transforming ancient symbols into engines of loyalty and blood. We hunt for devils to avoid looking at the machine, and our desperate hunger to be the one who unveils the truth only feeds the spectacle we claim to despise. Even these words risk becoming another layer of mortar in the towering wall we build to shield ourselves from the unknown. So, descend with me into the labyrinth of the anima mundi, the world's soul. Let us hope we do not lose our way in the dark. Figures like Douglas Wilson utilize literalized myths to construct a material spectacle, trapping followers in a restrictive system, and obstruct the experience of ineffable mysteries. By forcing allegories into cold, historical mandates, this approach acts as a soul trap that prioritizes political control over spiritual transcendence. Reading religious texts as simple instructions is like judging a cathedral by its blueprints. The flat plans reveal none of the finished building's true grandeur, light, or spiritual quiet. Such a shallow reading overlooks the dense symbolic layers that, like all great literature, demand a deeper interpretation. Religion is not merely a path to salvation, but an elaborate cave system, with each winding chamber revealing new truths as you explore. To read religion only as a guide to heaven or hell is to miss its deeper purpose, an evolving dialogue between human beings and the mysteries of existence. History shows that when a narrative becomes the truth, it provides a moral hall pass. If you believe you are fighting an ultimate evil, any action, even a terrible one, can be framed as a good necessity. Take the story of Cain and Abel in Genesis. Commonly thought of as a straightforward account of human sin, it is in fact a carefully structured narrative that uses characterization, irony, and symbolic imagery to explore themes of jealousy, moral responsibility, and exile. Abel's faithful offering and subsequent murder, contrasted with Cain's rejection and punishment, echoes earlier Mesopotamian myths of sibling rivalry, like Emesh and Enten or Dumuzid and Enkidu, while transforming these stories to emphasize human morality and the consequences of sin. Through its point of view, parallelism, and symbolic use of land, wandering, and sacrifice, Genesis preserves the echoes of an ancient world while simultaneously crafting a moral narrative whose literary sophistication ensures its enduring power. The story of Cain and Abel illustrates one way mythology grapples with human morality, jealousy, and the consequences of violence. Yet sibling rivalry is only one facet of a broader symbolic universe. Across cultures, myths use liminal figures and archetypes to explore questions of life, death, justice, and transformation. In this sense, Cain's exile and the establishment of the first city echo the same moral and existential concerns found in the fratricidal conflicts of Romulus and Remus or the Egyptian Set and Horus, where disorder, succession, and cosmic balance are tested and restored. These narratives reveal a common human impulse to dramatize the forces that govern existence, whether through family, society, or the cosmos, and to reflect on the consequences of our choices. Take Hecate, goddess of crossroads and thresholds. In guiding Demeter through the underworld, she embodies the liminality of transformation, the space between death and rebirth. Her nature echoes Saturn, the Roman architect of time and structure, and his Greek shadow, Cronus, who stood as a paradox of fertility and destruction. Across civilizations, this Saturnian pulse became a universal archetype. Shani's karmic justice in Hinduism, Ninurta's war and healing in Babylon, Horus as the Egyptian bull of the sky. In occult and syncretic studies, Satan as Eon or Ion. The Hellenistic god of boundless time in Yahweh, the Lord of the Sabbath, linked through Shabbatai to Saturn itself. In these manifestations, the core remains, time's heavy burden and the justice meted out through inexorable cycles. But today, the archetype has soured. Modern eyes see the soul trap, a demiurge who built a physical reality to ensnare human spirits in a loop of reincarnation. The image of Cronus devouring his own children is no longer just a myth. It is the ultimate metaphor for a system that sustains itself by consuming the life force of its followers. A Saturnian religion is one obsessed with the walls of the labyrinth, rules, guilt, and the binary cage of heaven and hell. Theorists point to the black cube, found across global faiths as the shared mechanism of a control that transcends individual stories. This syncretism, of a god who sacrifices his son and demands ritual mutilation as a rite of passage, is the final mask. It proves there is no static truth, only humanity shivering against the cold reality of mortality, begging for answers from a system designed to keep them asking. This complexity extends to Judaism itself. The biblical Yahweh, long thought to emerge from the distant mists of ancient Israel, is now understood by scholars like Dr. Gad Barnea to have developed later than traditional claims. The Yahweh of the Hebrew Bible may owe as much to Persian Zoroastrianism as to early Canaanite religion. Evidence from the Elephantine papyri reveals Yahwists participating in rituals that look suspiciously similar to Zoroastrian sacrifices, even drinking hauma. Barnea suggests that what became the Jewish Passover might once have been rooted in a Persian yasna. This interpretation situates the rise of canonical Judaism not in the desert revelations of Moses, but in the political realities of the Achaemenid Empire. Yahweh's ascent to supremacy was not a timeless inevitability, but a historical and cultural negotiation, a god elevated through exile, empire, and the machinery of law. A similar pattern of syncretism shaped Christianity. The Jesus story emerged not in isolation, but in the heart of a Greco-Roman world already brimming with myths of dying and rising gods, divine sons, and transformative feasts. The parallels to Dionysus are striking but not simplistic. Dionysus, the twice-born, rescued from his mother's incineration and gestated in Zeus's thigh, finds an echo in the miraculous birth and resurrection of Jesus. The Orphic myth of Zagreus, dismembered by Titans, his heart preserved to be reborn as Dionysus, bears a faint resemblance to the Eucharist, where Jesus's body and blood are consumed in remembrance. Yet the differences matter. Dionysus's story explains humanity's divided nature, while Jesus's sacrifice is framed as voluntary redemption. Again, what unites them is not theology but archetype. Both reflect a shared cultural motif: the God who suffers, dies, and returns, a symbol of nature's cycles and the hope for renewal. However, to accuse Christianity of plagiarizing pagan myths is to miss the point. The gospel writers, steeped in Greek language and literary forms, naturally expressed their message in terms familiar to a Hellenistic audience. Their Jesus was not Dionysus reborn, but a Jewish Messiah articulated through the archetypes of their world. The logos of John's Gospel borrows from Greek philosophy to explain Jesus's divine nature. Platonic notions of the soul seep into Christian theology, reshaping Jewish ideas of the afterlife. Paul, preaching in Athens and Rome, adapted his message to Greco-Roman ears, even as he rejected paganism. This was not theft but translation, the reframing of a Jewish story in a Mediterranean idiom. Contrasts between Dionysus and the Abrahamic god reveal just how diverse these mythological pathways could be. Dionysus was a god of arrival, ecstasy, and disruption, whose followers celebrated him with music, wine, and ecstatic rites. His worship was inclusive, his image widely depicted in sculpture and painting. Yahweh, by contrast, demanded exclusivity, denouncing other gods, commanding idol smashing and temple destruction. Where Dionysus's violence was mythic and ecstatic, Pentheus torn apart by frenzied Maenads, Yahweh, was theological, an assertion of divine supremacy. These differences show religion's multivalence. One culture enshrines a god of inclusion and frenzy, another elevates a god of singular authority. Both, however, respond to the same human impulse to define meaning in a chaotic world. In the end, religion is less about promising a paradise beyond death than about grappling with life itself. Each myth, ritual, and law reflects how human beings understood their place in the cosmos at a particular moment. From the Saturnine cycles of transformation to the Yahwistic laws of exclusivity, from Dionysus's ecstatic arrival to Christ's redemptive suffering, religion encodes the ever-unfinished story of humanity's longing for order, transcendence, and belonging. The task is not to read these traditions literally, but to dwell on their symbols, to decipher their esoteric layers, and to recognize them as records of our ancestors, attempts to make sense of time, suffering, and hope. The ancient philosopher Xenophanes once observed that if horses or oxen could draw, they would depict gods in their own likeness, horses imagining horse gods, oxen imagining ox gods. His point remains urgent. We create gods in our own image, shaping them according to our needs and our fears. To participate in religion, then, is not to submit blindly to an absolute truth, but to join a shared human project. To reflect on who we are, to build community through common stories, and to cultivate wisdom from the symbols our ancestors left behind. When religion is used to divide, to stir hatred, or to legitimize political enmity, it betrays this deeper purpose. If monotheism is wielded as a weapon to enforce one undisputed truth, perhaps we might learn again from polytheism, which offered a plurality of voices and an emphasis on community rather than exclusion. In returning to a more open system of religiosity, one that celebrates diversity, honors the shared search for meaning, and resists being narrowed into political dogma, we might recover what religion was always meant to be. Not a sword raised against others, but a chorus of human voices striving together to understand what it means to be. Your rulers are architects of illusion, and you are their willing tenants. You don't seek truth, you curate the lies that comfort you most. By casting votes for the most grand-scale deceptions, you grant them permission to dismantle the foundations of your laws. You don't just tolerate the rot, you bathe in it because it's profitable. You trade the Constitution for a spectacle that pays, proving that for the right price, you'll call your own chains freedom. Yet there is another possibility. If religion can be twisted into hatred, division, and the justification of violence, then perhaps we would all benefit from tearing it down entirely. Perhaps the gods must fall, all of them. In their ruins, we might build something truer, a recognition of our shared mistakes, a community grounded not in unquestioned dogma, but in the honest search for meaning. Only then could we rise together, shaping not idols of the past, but an idealized future of our own making. Instead of imagining a world controlled by archons with malevolent intentions, holding you in the chastity of their dogma, seek freedom in something that truly frees you from their shackles. Create mystical traditions and rituals personalized to your needs, free from the structures that claim to define you. Start here.